Hi everyone, welcome to Spacewalkers Live. This is Brian Wallach, Solution Architect Manager, and today I'll be providing some insight into Wi-Fi 6E and its benefits for business. There's been a lot of buzz about Wi-Fi 6E, with some saying it's the best thing since sliced bread, but let's just say it's the most exciting thing since the proliferation of Wi-Fi way back in 1999. Here at ALE, we know that whatever your industry you face Wi-Fi challenges when creating a better mobile experience, and that can feel daunting. We also realize that there's not a one-size-fits-all response to 6E integration. Businesses demand greater efficiencies for their employees, applications, and other resources that are enabled by mobility. Today, I'd like to show you why 6E is exciting, how to position it, and why it's important for our customers. From a productivity standpoint, 6E is powerful because you can support greater speeds for higher performance connectivity, build into your existing Wi-Fi 5 and 6 infrastructure, provide wider channels for enhanced performance and low latency. From a business standpoint, that means increased investment protection, getting the most out of the Wi-Fi spectrum, delivering contention-free communication, deploying a strategic plan for Wi-Fi 6E adoption. So sit back and relax while I show you why Wi-Fi 6E is the next big thing for Wi-Fi technology and how you can position it for our customers. It may seem cliche, but there really isn't a better way to communicate how important the approval and standardization of 6E really is. I guess I could have said it's the best thing since our ancestors discovered fire or the wheel. In this session, I'm going to explain why 6E is significant improvement over Wi-Fi 5 or even Wi-Fi 6. To understand the significance of 6E, let's first chat about sliced bread. Bread's been around for millennia, but sliced bread is recent in the scope of things. Why didn't people think about slicing it before? I don't know. What I can say is that we have been on a technical revolution for quite some time now. And one thing we know about technology, it's on a constant march of improvement and never stops. It is this continuation that drives consumer and business demand for more bandwidth, greater control over QoS, and a higher density. 6E answers those requirements. Before we continue, let's revisit our sliced bread analogy. Here are some things that most people don't know. Bread history goes all the way back 30,000 years ago. How bread was used has changed over the years. In fact, in the Middle Ages, a loaf of bread would be used as a plate and wouldn't be consumed until after the meal. As I mentioned earlier, sliced bread is relatively a new invention in the scope of bread history. It wasn't until the 20th century, specifically 1928, when the sliced bread machine was invented, and our lives have been improved since. Just like Wi-Fi 6E will improve our lives. Perhaps with this newfound knowledge, you can impress your neighbors and friends the next time you're at a party, or perhaps answer a few more Jeopardy questions. You're probably wondering, thanks for the history of the bread, but let's get on with 6E. Let's get after it. What I'm going to do is explain 6E so that you can talk intelligently about it with your customers. I want to provide you with a basic understanding of 6E and how to position it. I also think it's important that we also continue to sell Wi-Fi 6 access points. We will be in a transition for a while as our customers begin to think about 6E and the business cases, as well as having additional 6E consumer devices in the market, which all helps drive demand. I think it's important to understand where we have been to grasp the significance of Wi-Fi 6E. Let's connect the dots between the evolution of Wi-Fi and what each standard brought to the market. It's always good to understand the past to understand where we are going, which is Wi-Fi 6E. We have been waiting for over 20 years for the next big thing. So like sliced bread, this technology has finally arrived. We also need to understand why 6E is important to our customers, but we also need to understand our customer requirements. Perhaps they are not ready for Wi-Fi 6E, but are ready for Wi-Fi 6. Let's always understand our customer requirements so we can deploy a customized solution to delight our customers. In the early days of Wi-Fi, it was meant as an overlay to the wired network and was treated as a convenience. Today it is considered mandatory, and we couldn't imagine being without it. In 1999, with 802.11b, speeds weren't very fast, but the price was low, so it was a fair trade. The problem was that when other devices were added, speeds slowed even more, as well as interference increase. Also in 1999, 802.11a came to the rescue by reducing interference by switching to 5 GHz. By doing this, speeds increased, new modulations were used, which also increased speeds. 1999 was a big year for Wi-Fi. 802.11g was offered as well. It had the same speeds as Wi-Fi 2, but at 2.4 GHz. It was also backwards compatible, which lowered the cost of upgrading to faster equipment. The issue was that if an older device was on the network, it could slow down the entire wireless cell significantly, even up to 21%. Then there wasn't any large development in Wi-Fi for 10 years, quite a long time. Especially in terms of technological developments, I think 2009 solved some big issues with Wi-Fi 4. This offered a dual-band solution where an AP could have 2.4 and 5 GHz radios and MIMO. This was a significant improvement as well as the capability to handle more than one device at a time. We will see in a moment how speeds increased with each iteration and advancement in Wi-Fi. Just a few years later, in 2013, Wi-Fi 5 was made available. This standardization was a big leap because it introduced multi-user MIMO, which not only allowed more than a single device to be communicated at a time, but it allowed 4 simultaneous streams to communicate. It also offered faster speeds on 5 GHz, as well as large improvements in beamforming. Wi-Fi 5 made beamforming more ubiquitous and much improved. It was also available in Wi-Fi 4 as well. So what is beamforming, you might ask? Beamforming uses MIMO to send out multiple overlapping signals and is very mathematically complex. Don't worry, I won't be going into any formulas. What is important is that beamforming directs a much better quality signal directed to the client. The jump from Wi-Fi 4 to 5 took about four years, so the pace of Wi-Fi advancement was starting to pick up. Then we slowed down again, and Wi-Fi 6 was released in 2019, which almost feels like a technological lifetime. Wi-Fi 6 had huge improvements with offering new MIMO and uplinks and downlinks and better target wake-up time for longer battery life. Wi-Fi 6 was built for IoT. IoT devices have smaller batteries and oftentimes placed in difficult-to-reach areas. So extending the battery life makes a lot of sense. It also made more for dense environments because of the way spatial reuse is utilized. Let's take a quick look at how the speeds have increased over the years. As you can see, we have made significant gains in terms of bandwidth with each iteration of Wi-Fi. But now theoretically, you could get 10 gigabytes connection if all things are perfect and the stars are aligned. Not only speeds have excelled, but user devices have also skyrocketed. If we look at the number of personal devices per user since 2018, it was 8 devices. In 2023, it's expected to be 13 devices in North America. That's a 61% increase. In other parts of the world, like Western Europe, it's 5 devices in 2018 and expected to be 9 in 2023. That is almost double. Speeds have increased, and so have users, which create a lot of contention. Too much contention is never good in wireless. The wireless community needed another answer. Not quite 2 years ago, the FCC approved the use of a 1200 megahertz spectrum. This is the largest unlicensed spectrum ever approved. To put things in perspective, this is a larger spectrum than both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz combined, which is pretty incredible. It has been adopted in Canada, Chile, Costa Rica, to name a few countries. I believe there are now about 60 countries that have fully adopted or partially adopted. The good news is that we now have available some super wide channels for those high bandwidth applications like virtual reality, augmented reality, and 4K video. Of course, it's expected these applications will increase in popularity over the next couple years. 6E makes it possible to have 14 80 megahertz channels and 29 40 megahertz channels and a whopping 59 20 megahertz channels. Up until this point, when we channel bonded, it was a trade-off. Either channel bond and have less channels available, which brings us back to the issue of not having enough channels like we had with 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, or giving up bandwidth. 6E allows us to have both. Here's the channel breakdown. As you can see, they added Uni 5, 6, 7, and 8. When you see it like this, you realize how large a spectrum this really is and how exciting it is to have these super wide channels, and we don't have the limitations of 5 gigahertz in terms of dynamic frequency selection, or as we call it, DFS. As of December, many countries were either adopting the same spectrum as we have in the US or a portion thereof. There are now 60 countries that have adopted 6E, which is just incredible to have this expansion in this short of time. Markets really see the need to quickly adopt it. You'll see more and more consumer devices support 6E in the very near future. This is all very exciting, and why I think it's the best thing since sliced bread. Wi-Fi 6E captures all the improvements of Wi-Fi 6, which includes increased throughput because of things like 1024 QAM, which mean more data can be sent at the same time. MIMO now increases to 8x8, so even more devices can be seen simultaneously. Again, if we go back to the per user device count a few slides ago, this prepares us to support even more users on an AP and target wait time for extended battery life. Lastly, WPA3. Except with the Wi-Fi 6E, it is mandatory to support WPA3, and it will not be backwards compatible with WPA2. Let's look at the key benefits of 6E. Wider channels, 3 times increase of the combined 2.4 and 5 gigahertz spectrum. Low latency is also addressed in 6E to meet demands of applications that are sensitive to latency, as well as higher bandwidth requirements for AR or VR, as high bandwidth applications is expected to grow. One of the biggest benefits of Wi-Fi 6E is that it is a brand new spectrum, so it's contention-free. If we look at 2.4 gigahertz, we've had to contend with Bluetooth, microwave, DECT handsets. All of these impacted the spectrum and potentially caused interference. Now we don't have a crowded highway. Another interesting point to make in 6E is there are three classes of 6E access points, each with their own restrictions for max power, install location, even wired power. There is the VLP with is used for mobile. We do not plan to have an offering in this space. The low power indoor only, which we call LPI, LPI only has integrated antennas and is only meant for indoor deployment with a max ERP of 30 dBm. Lastly, the standard power class that can be used in indoor and outdoor, but most must coordinate with the new 6E concept of AFC, or Automated Frequency Coordination, which is essentially a database the AP needs to communicate with to ensure the channels it would like to use do not interfere with microwaves. The AP is also required to communicate its GPS coordinates to the AFC as well. The AFC is still being sorted out by the FCC. There was a public notice that went out for comments on proposals that were due December 21st, 2021. The FCC is in the process of evaluating and approving AFC systems. We spoke of classes of APs, but there are also defined client device types. For example, one device type is a subordinate indoor device. This device does not have direct internet. For example, a smart TV or a gaming console. There is a power requirement for these devices. When designing a wireless network, we should always transmit at the same power as a connected device. This way, we can ensure bidirectional communication and minimize packet loss. The other device type is fixed outdoor device. This would also need to use the AFC and must be able to automatically geolocate. It must be attached to a structure and use standard power. Again, the AFC is used so there is not interference with microwave communication. The last device type is a mobile device. Let's review some items of interest. 1. We highly recommend not to rip and replace an existing Wi-Fi 5 or Wi-Fi 6 AP infrastructure, as a Wi-Fi 6E cell size will be smaller as the frequency is higher. The higher the frequency, the more absorption we see. 2. We highly recommend to conduct a physical passive survey to determine proper AP placement to ensure coverage and bandwidth expectations are met. 3. 6E uses the same technology as Wi-Fi 6. Also keep in mind, specific channels have different power restrictions. Lastly, when channel bonding, do not use max power, as this may introduce noise, which will have a negative impact on signal quality. The value of 6E is massive. If we look at the global projection for the Wi-Fi market, it was estimated to be $3.3 trillion in 2021, with an expected increase to a massive $4.9 trillion in 2025. Wireless will only grow, so there is a massive opportunity to grow your business, and we are here to partner with you. If we look at some specific countries, Mexico alone is set to double its Wi-Fi initiatives, as well as Colombia. Currently, Mexico has 7 million public Wi-Fi access points, which is only about 65% broadband penetration. Colombia has 412,000 public Wi-Fi access points, and this is planned to expand for a deeper penetration as well. This gives us an excellent opportunity to help a country grow in its Wi-Fi initiative. We have the products to meet the demands. I ran across this quote from Nikola Tesla that he said many years before he even saw the adoption of wireless. I thought it was interesting. He says when wireless is perfectly applied, the whole earth will be converted into a huge brain, which in fact it is, all things being particles of a real and rhythmic whole. We shall be able to communicate with one another instantly, irrespective of distance, and here we are today living that reality. Information is literally at our fingertips, and we can communicate in seconds, and wireless makes this possible, and hopefully makes us better people. We also want to make sure our customers are better. 6E is important to our customers because in a greenfield deployment, we can help ensure some investment protection where they won't need to upgrade for the next few years as the 6E adoption rate continues to increase. If our customers see a need to be in the metaverse, they're going to need wireless that is robust, has low latency, and high bandwidth. We're starting to see more augmented realities at companies. This requires greater speed as well as low latency. And the most important is having Wi-Fi that is contention-free for an improved experience. We see a lot of growth in Wi-Fi 6, and we have a portfolio of APs that will satisfy a customer's demands. We think Wi-Fi 6 to be the predominant technology in the near term, then Wi-Fi 6E will have a tremendous growth into 2024. We are uniquely positioned to be a growth engine as we partner together. In 2022, we plan to release two 6E access points, a high-end AP that will support 10 gig with a tri-radio, which will support 2.4, 5 gigahertz, and 6 gigahertz, also will include BLE and Zigbee. In Q4, we plan to launch the 1431, which is also a tri-radio AP that offers 2.5 gigabit Ethernet connection. We're pretty excited about these. I want to leave you with a few key takeaways. Wi-Fi 6E is the next big thing in Wi-Fi technology, and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. We are going to release not one, but two 6E APs this year. First the high end, then the mid-level. There's still a lot of growth in Wi-Fi 6, but if you have a customer that is a greenfield, they may want to consider 6E. Lastly, 6 gigahertz is not available in every country, but approval has been increasing substantially. So there you have it, folks. Let's recap some of the lessons that we learned about Wi-Fi 6E. First, Wi-Fi 6E is the next big thing for the Wi-Fi technology standard. Customers are demanding increased wireless efficiency for a better mobile experience. 6E provides increased levels of throughput, bandwidth, client density, latency, and security. Plan for Wi-Fi 6 to grow for the next 2 years, then transition to 6E and sell accordingly. 6E sets the new standard for unprecedented high-efficiency Wi-Fi connectivity that can really support every business's future growth. Thanks for attending today's session. If you want to learn more about Wi-Fi 6E, please go to ai-enterprise.com.